Hey guys, how's it going? This is Kevin Ehsani, and you are watching The Progressive Experience. I hope everybody is having a great week. This is going to be our third episode, and we are going to be talking about some interesting stories that happened within the past week or so. So I'm so glad to have you guys here. And don't forget to check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/Prague Blacksmith. Check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/Prague Blacksmith, and also check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Prague Blacksmith. And if you could become a patron, that would be very much appreciated. So let's get to the first story here. So there were some revelations that came out this past month, January, kind of late January-ish, talking about how Hillary Clinton had an advisor in her 2008 campaign it was actually a faith advisor. And this person was being accused, so during that 2008 campaign, they were being accused of sexual assault against certain members of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And now she's coming under fire for it after an expose or kind of investigation done by the New York Times. So I'm going to read you the article here. This is an article from the New York Times written by Maggie Haberman and Amy Chozick. This came out. This article is from January 26th of this year, and so the title of the article is Hillary Clinton chose to shield a top advisor accused of harassment in 2008. So let's get to the details here. The article starts off by saying a senior advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign who was accused of repeatedly sexually harassing a young subordinate was kept on the campaign at Mrs. Clinton's request, according to 4 people familiar with what took place. Mrs. Clinton's campaign manager at the time recommended that she fire the advisor, Burns Strider, but Mrs. Clinton did not. Instead, Mr. Strider was docked several weeks of pay and ordered to undergo counseling, and the young woman was moved to a new job. Mr. Strider, who was Mrs. Clinton's faith advisor, was a founder of the American Values Network and sent the candidate's scripture readings every morning for months during the campaign, was hired 5 years later to lead an independent group that supported Mrs. Clinton's 2016 candidacy, Correct the Record, which was created by a close Clinton ally, David Brock. So let's just stop here for a second. So the things that were going on in Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008 allegedly continued way after that, at least 5 years after that, even going into her 2016 campaign. Obviously, the one that she had against Donald Trump, this in the last election. So she basically kept him on as some sort of a, what does it say here? Was hired 5 years later to lead an independent group that supported. So basically, he was still affiliated with Hillary Clinton in many ways. If not Hillary Clinton directly, certainly many of her allies and her confidants, in this case David Brock, who is, definitely aligned with Hillary Clinton in more ways than just being, running a website or whatever, a super PAC or whatever that, that supports her. Definitely somebody that's aligned with her in many ways, guaranteed. So that's really interesting. So let's go on to the next part here. It says, he, referring to Mr. Strider, Burns Strider, was fired after several months for workplace issues, including allegations that he harassed a young female aide, according to 3 people close to Correct the Record's management. Mr. Strider did not respond to multiple requests for comment. It says those familiar with the account said that over the years, a number of advisors urged Mrs. Clinton to sever ties with Mr. Strider, and people familiar with what took place did not want to see Mrs. Clinton blamed for the misconduct of men she was close to. They continue here. It says the complaint from the young woman was initially brought to Jess O'Connell, who is the National Director of Operations for the Clinton campaign. This is referring to the 2008 campaign, not 2016 as of yet. Miss O'Connell, who is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Democratic National Committee, handled the investigation and advised the Clinton campaign manager, Patty Solis Doyle, that Mr. Strider should be fired, according to 3 people familiar with the events. Miss O'Connell told colleagues that she was concerned that the young woman making the allegations should not be demoted when she was moved from Mr. Strider's supervision. The woman requested to have no more interactions with Mr. Strider, and she was moved to a different job within the campaign, reporting directly to Mike Henry, the deputy campaign manager. So this is a really interesting, really interesting and disturbing situation, because there's many people, not only Hillary Clinton, but there's many people, that are running her campaign, that are involved in her campaign, involved with her directly, that are being told, and are also telling her, listen, you got to get rid of this guy. He is, he's obviously done something really fucked up, really, really terrible. Sexual misconduct, obviously is a big issue in general, but it's obviously becoming a big issue now, which is why we're going over this article and addressing this situation. Because first of all, Hillary Clinton is somebody that has gone out there and put herself out there as this beacon of feminism and standing up for women's rights and standing up for the women that are not represented out there. Well, if you're doing that and you are basically finding ways to keep people on your campaign that are obviously not in favor of women's, rights, as far as not getting sexually assaulted, which is not that big of a request. I mean, that shouldn't be, you should expect somebody, when you tell them not to sexually assault you, that should be a big deal to be, that should be a big deal and be taken seriously, It's not that big of a deal to ask somebody to not bother you. They should know to stand down. Don't, stop putting your hands on me. Whatever this guy was doing, he was probably making lewd comments. Whatever he was doing, he should obviously be stopping right away. But not only was he not stopping, when they were telling the different people in the campaign that this guy was doing these things, not only was he not stopping, they weren't doing anything to give him any punishment other than some docked pay and 2 weeks of being suspended or something. No, I think he was just docked pay. I don't even think he was suspended. Yeah, according to this article, it doesn't look like he was even he wasn't even removed. So he basically, docked pay. What is that? That's just, the guy is probably already rich anyway. So docked pay for him is nothing. And that obviously is not a solution to the problem of sexual harassment. There needs to be a hell of a lot more punishment for something like that than just some person getting lesser pay or getting, not getting paid for 2 weeks or something. But yeah, that's really weird. If you're going out there and saying you're, standing up for women like this, and you're not even you're literally not standing up for this woman. What kind of representative for women are you? You're obviously not very good. There was another part here that says, I'm just going to continue. It says the investigation into Mr. Strider's conduct was described as brief, but it included a review of a number of emails he sent the young woman who had shared an office with him. A spokesman for Mrs. Clinton provided this statement from Utrecht Kleinfeld Fiore Partners, the law firm that had represented the campaign in 2008, and which her advisor said has been involved on sexual harassment issues. Quoting here, it says, to ensure a safe working environment, the campaign had a process to address complaints of misconduct or harassment. When matters arose, they were reviewed in accordance with these policies, and appropriate action was taken, the statement said. This complaint was no exception. It says, late Friday, more than a day after the New York Times reached out to her aides For comment, Mrs. Clinton posted on Twitter that she was dismayed when it occurred. So I remember reading her comment when she, responded to this whole thing. And so if you read the comment, it's basically your run-of-the-mill statement. I mean, she didn't really even say much of anything as far as like taking any responsibility, but I don't know, make your own determination here. It says a story appeared today about something that happened in 2008. This is quoting Hillary Clinton's Twitter post. It says, I was dismayed when it occurred, but was heartened the young woman came forward, was heard, and had her concerns taken seriously and addressed. And then a follow-up post or follow-up tweet says, I called her today to tell her how proud I am of her and to make sure she knows what all women should. We deserve to be heard. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense because obviously you didn't care for her to be heard. If you cared for her to be heard, you would have allowed her to be heard back in 2008. You would have came out, stood up for her, gotten rid of this sleazeball who's sexually harassing her, involved in obviously misconduct, that should not be taking place, which is ironic coming from a person that's a faith advisor. If you're a faith advisor, you're supposed to be like this person of moral character. Obviously, you're not. Apparently, they're supposed to have moral character, but they obviously don't. And yeah, for Hillary Clinton to pretend like, oh yeah, I stood up for her. I'm so glad that she was heard, and I gave her a call today. How about giving her a call back then? Did you call her back then? Did you say anything to her then? Did you have time to give her any attention back then when she was initially harassed? I mean, yeah, it's easier to address the situation, however many years later, 8 years later. That's not the same thing at all. And as one of the comments here, a couple of the tweets here, it says that apparently they even gave the guy another job. So, I mean, it even got that bad. I mean, she was obviously friends, or she was close with this person, this Strider guy, and she was not. She was not in no hurry to get rid of him, no way. And she probably wanted to do that because she wanted to make sure he remains with her because, I don't know, she has some sort of friendship with him. So it's like, it's all about being, having this connection with certain people, having connections with these certain people where you don't want to get them fired, because if you do, then, they end up getting pissed at you. They might come out with some salacious news that you don't want to be heard, and stuff like that. And with Hillary, I mean, that could be the likelihood. I'm not exactly sure, but there was obviously a reason why she didn't want to get rid of him, and I'm sure it had to do something with, the guy not, basically not attacking her after he's obviously gone from the campaign. I think that's pretty much it as far as this article. Let me just go over couple more parts here. It says, they said that Miss Solis Doyle, the campaign manager, and other senior campaign officials discussed the situation involving Mr. Strider and Mrs. Clinton's response at the time. And Mrs. Clinton's response at the time. Some of them were troubled that he was allowed to remain on the campaign. The complaint against Mr. Strider was made by a 30-year-old woman who shared an office with him. She told a campaign official that Ms. Strider had rubbed her shoulders inappropriately, kissed her on the forehead, and sent her a string of suggestive emails, including at least one during the night, according to 3 former campaign officials familiar with what took place. That's fucking creepy. Wow. The complaint was taken to Mrs. Doyle, the campaign manager, who approached Mrs. Clinton and urged that Mr. Strider, who was married at the time, be fired, according to the officials familiar with what took place. Mrs. Clinton said she did not want to, and instead he remained on her staff. I mean, that is crazy, dude. And then look at this. Mrs. Doyle was fired shortly. Mrs. Doyle was fired shortly after that in a staff shakeup in response to Miss Clinton's Mrs. Clinton's third place finish in the 2008 Iowa caucuses, and Mr. Strider never attended the mandated counseling, according to two people with direct knowledge of the situation. So that's what happened. The guy he was required to take counseling to, basically make up for the fact that he's going and sexually harassing women, and he didn't even go. So he never even bothered to get any counseling on, obviously, as a fucking serious problem that he has. Yeah, and the fact that she also ended up getting rid of the woman who recommended to her that he should be fired, I mean, that can't be a coincidence. What, just because you turned out to be third place, in the Iowa caucuses doesn't mean that's the first caucus. That's the first caucus in a presidential race. The fact that you decided to fire her after that, I mean, what? That doesn't mean your campaign is fucking screwed because you ended up in third place. No, you got rid of her because she was recommending something that you didn't want to do. And it's obvious Hillary, was, she had intentions to do that just so she can save the ass of this guy. And yeah, that's very, how fitting is that? Okay, so so that's a really fucked up situation. It just comes to show the typical opportunism from somebody like Hillary Clinton, who really she just wants to do things that benefit her, in the long run. Even if she has to do something that is going to be better for her, campaign and her image, she doesn't care, because she just figures people are just going to either forget about it or she can clean it up somehow so that it's not recognized. But trust me, people are noticing these kind of things. Nobody's stupid. She basically assumes everybody's an idiot, and they're not going to notice when she's doing sleazy shit. So. Okay, so the next story we have here is about Bernie Sanders, and apparently the Vermont senator and the 2016, the potential 2020 frontrunner. Which is definitely something that people have been expecting him to be. That's something that might come to fruition, and there's an article here from Politico which describes the meetings apparently that he has had with his advisors and some people in his team of his political team of people who obviously gave him advice on what to do, and so this is an article from Politico. The title is Bernie Sanders summons team to discuss 2020. And the subheadline says, although the Vermont senator hasn't made a decision, sources say he wants to be ready if he throws his hat in the ring. So that's a big amount. That's big news for Bernie Sanders and many people that are his supporters, including myself. I am definitely not surprised by something like this, but I'm definitely glad to see it. So let's just go through the article here. It says, Bernie Sanders convened his top political advisors in Washington on Saturday for a planning meeting that included a decision of the feasibility and shape of a possible 2020 presidential campaign. Half a dozen senior Democrats familiar with the gathering confirmed to Politico. The top-line message the Vermont senator received from the operatives gathered during the government shutdown was a more formal version of the one they've been giving him regularly for months. You would be one of the front-runners for the Democratic nomination, and if you want to run, it's time to start seriously planning accordingly. The Democratic Socialists' response to the series of presentations, according to multiple Democrats, I haven't yet made a decision about 2020, but I still think beating Donald Trump is the most important thing for this country, and I want to be ready if I do decide to run. Sanders regularly speaks with a close group of advisors and periodically brings top allies in to discuss his political maneuvers. But Saturday's get-together included planning for the rest of 2018, as well as a specifically slated 2020 component, said Democrats familiar with the session, which was scheduled for the one-year anniversary of Trump's inauguration. Part of the discussion included gaming out how the rest of the field might look since 2016's landscape. Effectively pitting Sanders directly against Hillary Clinton was far more straightforward than the expected 2020 free-for-all. So it's clear he's getting a lot of, he's definitely planning things much more carefully. And he is trying to be a little bit more, I guess a little bit more prepared for what's going to come. Now we're looking at about roughly 2 years from now. Well, obviously 1, 2, 3. No, it's about 2.5 years, obviously, because it's 2020 in November. But obviously, you have a primary and stuff, so you got to go through the primary process. So that starts obviously in 2019, and then obviously in 2020 through halfway about 2020 is when they decide who the nominee is. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Bernie is that when he got his, put his name into the presidential primary for the Democrats, first of all, nobody knew who he was. So, I don't know how, I would say 80% of the country really didn't know who he was. I knew who he was. I was following Bernie Sanders pretty much ever since 2000, I would say before 2010 at least. I would always watch him on different shows, and he would appear on MSNBC a lot, and he even appears a lot on MSNBC now. But he would appear on a lot of programs back then, not so much on CNN. He more on the, liberal type channel, because there wasn't a lot of channels that were liberal. That never has been. But MSNBC, you could say back then, was definitely much more liberal. And he would appear there, and I remember seeing him on with, people like Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow and stuff like that. So, yeah, certainly was. So, looking back on my political my political history of everything that was happening back before Bernie really got big. I can remember when he wasn't that big, but he would still appear on a lot of shows, giving his opinion and stuff. So it's definitely obvious that they want to make sure that he's much more prepared coming into this next campaign, because if he's not, then they're going to have the same issues as 2016, where again, nobody knew who he was. He didn't have a lot of name recognition. Democrats didn't even really want him running as a Democrat, which was very troublesome. So he had to go through a lot of the process of getting Democrats to accept and think he's not some sort of double agent or something, which, I mean, that's the reason why they treated him so shitty and basically rigged the primary against him, as Donna Brazile exposed, and as many people were saying for so long. But that's something I talked about on one of my, I think it was my first episode, and first or second episode. But yeah, so it's, Bernie is definitely trying to tread these waters very carefully, make sure if he's making the decision, it's much more calculated, much more prepared. But I would say it's probably about 90% likely that he's running, I would say. Because when you come out with stuff like this, they don't, when they talk about these things in these articles, this stuff doesn't just come out randomly. This shit is leaked. They leak these things so that they make sure the different outlets, in this case political, I don't know, whoever you want to talk, New York Times and Washington Post, they want to make sure all these different outlets get the idea of what this person is doing, what this politician is doing. And politicians know when they don't want something to come out, they don't let it come out. In this case, he wants it to come out. He wants it to be known that he's definitely considering. And whenever you're considering something like that, and you put it out there, that means you're almost positively going to do it. No doubt about it. That's my take. I mean, for somebody that's been following politics for so long, that's basically what I've noticed a lot of politicians doing. Let me just continue reading the rest of a little bit more of the article here. It says multiple Democrats close to Sanders insisted that the meeting was not solely a 2020 planning session and that the conversation was one in a series of talks that he frequently has with aides and associates in regular, less formal sessions. But they all acknowledged that this gathering was larger than the rest and that it included a pre-planned discussion of the next presidential race. The senator, 76, has consistently refused to rule out running when asked over the past year, instead pivoting the conversation to other topics. And to be fair, what he does a lot of times when he gets asked questions like that is he gets into substance, and he gets into going after whether it's Trump, whether it's corporate Democrats. He focuses on policy substance so that he can let people know that he doesn't care about the horse race. If anybody knows Bernie, people that know Bernie, they know he doesn't really give a shit about all this horse race talk. And this is what the mainstream media is obsessed with. And it's like, oh, who's gonna run? Is it going to be this person? Is it going to be that person? How high are they in the polls? How much are they liked? What are their, what different maneuvers are they doing? But this, that's why I was referring to before. This is like the fact that they're coming out with this. Bernie and his campaign or his whatever confidants are coming out with this now. It's because it's a calculated decision to do something like that, basically. So he wants to do basically what a lot of the politicians are doing, or what a lot of the politicians do, which is leak information that, oh yeah, he might be running, So that gets a little bit of chatter going on, and people start anticipating, and then they start talking, they start chirping about, oh, he's going to do this and he's going to do that, and what's his ideas and his policies and shit. Yeah, so basically that's not something Bernie does all the time. So it's definitely. It's definitely out of character for him from what I know about him. But obviously the news in general is good. I don't really care whether he leaks it or doesn't leak it. Finding out about it is very good. And it confirms a lot of the things that I already knew and many other Bernie supporters knew. So the other part, the rest of the article here says, this is a quote from Jeff Weaver, who's his Sanders campaign manager and top political advisor. He says the senator is extremely focused on making sure the Democrats win in 2018, and that is the primary goal right now, to retake the House and retake the Senate so we can stop this horrendous Trump agenda. Sanders has remained toward the top of polls, surveying the potential Democratic field without fail after his stunning 2016 bid, and he has been working methodically to address major issues that plagued him politically last time, boning up on foreign policy and making nice with a series of party power brokers. He also visited both Iowa and New Hampshire multiple times in 2017, a traditional sign of a possible run. Okay, let's hold it there. That part of the article is a little bit concerning because anytime you are making nice, quote unquote, and look how they word it there, making nice basically means that you are going to the different members of the Democratic National Committee, Democratic Party. So that means Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, unfortunately even Tom Perez, who's the head of the DNC, and then even Keith Ellison, who, to be fair, Keith Ellison is a close friend of Bernie Sanders, and Bernie supported him to be the head of the DNC when he was running against Perez, but now he's the deputy. I think he's the deputy chair. So he's definitely talking to these people. He's trying to make nice with these people. He's probably going to cocktail parties with them and shit. So it's like a lot of this is like, again, it's a calculated maneuver, but I don't like that, man. I don't know if I know that's what he has to do, because if he doesn't do that, then they're going to be trying everything to smear him and discredit him and put him down, which is exactly what they did in 2016. The fact that he didn't do this in 2016, and to be fair, the reason he probably didn't do it is because he probably didn't think he had much of a shot. He just was like, all right, you know what? And I remember Bernie explaining many times that, the reason why he wants to run is because there's no other good people running. So it's like, okay, I'm going to run, put my hat in the ring, see what happens. And he definitely didn't expect the political revolution, as they call it, to get so much momentum and get so much attention, and it did. And but my point is that he didn't make nice, as they're saying here. He didn't make nice with them in 2016. So that pissed them off. That's why a lot of times they were kind of seeing him as a double agent. They were seeing him as somebody he's not really part of the party, which that's what a lot of the people say. So he's not really part of the party, and whatever. He's an opportunist, and he's just trying to get in, he's just trying to get his foot in the door so he can, infiltrate our party and, God forbid, make it more progressive, because as we all know, the Democratic Party is not progressive. To be fair, it's never really been progressive, but I mean, it's not really as progressive as it, if it ever was, definitely not as progressive as it used to be. And the whole idea of making nice is to butter these Democrats up and tell them, like, no, don't worry, wink, wink, nod, nod, don't worry, I'm on your side this time. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be putting down any Democrats. I'm not going to be so-called smearing them, even though you're really just telling the truth about about those Democrats. So, when he was criticizing the corporate establishment stuff, see, that's the problem. That's one thing that Bernie needs to be careful with. He doesn't need to be going out there making nice with these people. In reality, what you need to be making, and he knows it, but what he needs to really be making nice with is the people, is the voters, and he knows this. And to be fair, he does that. But at the same time, it's kind of, I don't know. It's just really like it worries me because, and unfortunately, ever since the State of the Union, which Trump's State of the Union, which Bernie also gave a response to, we're going to be discussing that later on in the show. Ever since then, he has been ratcheting up this, anti-Russia, anti-Vladimir Putin, the election was rigged, blah, blah, blah talk. And this is not talk that I agree with. I do not believe that Russia stole the election. I do not believe that Russia rigged the election, all that shit. And, I get it. He needs to do it. And, I saw somebody saying on Twitter the other day that, well, I'm not going to totally discredit this person, referring to Bernie, when I agree with 95 to 98% of what they believe in, and then the 2 to 5% that I don't agree, don't agree with. And I get that. But the issue of this Russia stuff is just, in my opinion, is just ridiculous. Like, you're really just you're just doing what you're doing. You're only saying that because you want to please the establishment. You want to please the people, the higher ups in the party. You want to please them and let them know, like, don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about I'm sorry. I'm going to be talking about my issues, but I'm also going to be talking about the issues that please you, so that you can, every now and then when I should be talking about Medicare for all and universal college and, a $15 minimum wage, a living wage, when I should be talking about these issues, no, I'm going to be talking about Russia every now and then too. So he kind of sprinkles in that anti-Russia stuff just to give them, just to throw them a bone a little bit, and yeah, I don't know. The rest of this article is basically just talks about the different, people that are, Bernie Sanders spoke to, and, I don't know, some meetings he had and shit. So basically, yeah, it's obviously this is good news. I'm happy about it. Again, Bernie needs to be careful not to push this anti-Russia shit too much, because I understand people have this feeling of, Russia being involved in the election, Russia doing this, Russia doing that. But listen, Russia rigging the election is not a big issue among progressives. And this is what Bernie has to worry about. He needs to worry about keeping his progressive base, because I talk to a lot of people out there who already believe that Bernie has pushed the anti-Russia shit too much. And this is before what I was just talking about, how I said that he was ratcheting up the rhetoric post the State of the Union. He was talking a lot about Russia, in other situations too. Now, I'm sorry, that's what other people say, at least. I don't hear it that much. I mean, I just only been hearing it ever since the State of the Union, essentially, or somewhere around there. And before that, people feel that he was saying it a lot back then. I don't know. I didn't hear it all the time. But like I said, I'm hearing it a lot more now. And he needs to be careful because progressives don't want to hear that stuff about Russia. If you want to talk about how, Donald Trump is involved financially in some sort of financial corruption, with a lot of Russian oligarchs and stuff, that's a perfectly fine discussion to have. I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, you need to understand that you can't base your campaign. So if you're going to go and run against Trump, you can't base, a good chunk of your campaign on talking about how Russia stole the last election. And they're going to be stealing it this time too and shit like that. I mean, if you go into stuff like that, you're just going to create a lot of friction between Bernie Sanders, voters or Bernie Sanders campaign and progressives. So, activists and the people out there who are, obviously supported him in 2016, still support him now. If all they're going to be hearing is about Russia all the time, then it's going to bug the hell out of us. And we don't want to support somebody like that. We want somebody that focuses on the issues that we care about. And that focuses on Medicare for all, universal college, $15 minimum wage, ending the wars, fighting against, the big pharmaceutical industry, big pharma and stuff, those are the main things that should be focused. The drug war, all that shit. So, I mean, here's to hoping that he does. I really hope he does. I hope he doesn't rail against Russia all the time. And if he does, that's not going to make progressives happy. I'm just telling you right now. Okay, so the next issue, the next topic we're going to broach here is going to be addressing the matter of protests occurring in Iran and how the U.S. has some sort of involvement in basically riling up these protests. So I read a great article from mintnewspress.com, which is a great progressive website, independent media. And there was an article from a writer named Nafiz Ahmed. And the title is, U.S. State Department spent over $1 million in Iran to exploit unrest. The subheadline says, documents reveal regime change aspirations were pursued under the cover of democracy promotion programs. So that's really, really alarming. Somebody that is Persian. I have family that lives in Iran. My parents are from Iran. This is a really big deal because unfortunately if some of you don't know, there's been some corruption issues. I mean, not that Iran has ever avoided Iran's government has ever avoided being corrupt, but there's some issues of corruption that have arose from within the government where apparently they've been accused of stealing money from a lot of they've been stealing the savings of a lot of people, a lot of citizens in Iran and stuff, and it's just a lot of financial corruption. That's obviously, and that's and when that's hurting your bottom line, just like in this country, when you're fucking hurting somebody's bottom line, they're gonna get pissed. So, but I'm gonna get into more detail about that in a second. But I just wanted to say that there have been a lot of protests occurring. I live in Los Angeles, and there was a lot of people protesting in front of there was a federal building here near where I live. There was there's protests happening there. There's people walking down one of the main streets here where I live, and They were chanting, holding up signs. So it's a really, really big deal in a community where I live, where there are a lot of Persian people. There's a lot of Iranian people, a lot of people from Iran, a lot of people that obviously have family in Iran, just like myself. So it's a big deal. But let me, I digress. Let me read the article here. So, so I already read the headline. So it says, at the end of 2017, a dozen cities across Iran, including the capital Tehran, were rocked by spontaneous protests, which continued into the new year. The protests drew attention to the country's deteriorating economic conditions, along with the regime's abysmal human rights record. They also paved the way for President Donald Trump's announcement on January 12th that this would be a quote last chance, end quote, for waiving U.S. nuclear sanctions under the Iran nuclear deal for a further 60 days, after which the U.S. would withdraw if its quote disastrous flaws unquote cannot be fixed. A range of recent official documents from congressional research to U.S. foreign aid funding reports throw new light on the Trump administration's approach. The documents reveal the U.S. government's continued interest in triggering major political change in Iran to pull the country into the orbit of American interests. This includes the possibility of exploiting political unrest and other crises, including a worsening water crisis, to turn popular opinion against the regime. So what people have to understand is that majority of the people in Iran do not support this government. Of course, why would they? It's a authoritarian government where, to be fair, Iran's people are much more secular than, Saudi Arabia and many other Middle Eastern countries out there, but, which have authoritative regimes. And, while they a lot of them don't support the regime, so the government run by Ali Khamenei and all that stuff, they do not have the same idea and the same goal of regime change that the United States wants. So the neoconservatives and in many cases neoliberals in this country, the things that they support and they want is that they want regime change in Iran, and what that basically means is that they want a puppet government to be put inside Iran's government. And instead of, Ali Khamenei and the supreme leader and all that stuff, they want a government that they can basically serve them. That's the basic idea behind what America and the American government wants. And, of course, as many people know, in the 1950s, the United States, the CIA, they overthrew the United States. They overthrew the Iranian government when Mohammad Mossadegh was there, and they overthrew him because he wanted to nationalize the oil industry. And Iran had and it still has a lot of oil, and he wanted to nationalize it. Give more of the money that was being made off of that oil. He wanted to give it to the people. God forbid! What an asshole! How could you do that? But of course, that's a totally humane thing to do. And once many countries, I'm sure many countries, bordering Iran as well that are allies with America, once they found this out, England and stuff, they were all like, holy shit, we can't let this happen. We have to, overthrow this government, start some sort of, protesting and different, people getting upset, which is ironically what they're trying to do now. But, do that so that, you overthrow the government, and then, okay, maybe hopefully we can put somebody in there. And then that's when they managed to get the Shah of Iran in there. And then they got the Shah government in there, and that was eventually overthrown in 1979. And but now that's given them basically the supreme leader. So now they have even more authority, because the Shah was already authoritative. Granted, he wasn't as bad as the current government right now, but this government is worse. So it's like it's just gotten worse and worse for the Iranian people. So, let me read the rest of it here. It says Iran's unrest has mostly been driven by a convergence of domestic, ecological, energy, and economic crises. The State Department has sought to exploit these crises to undermine the legitimacy of the regime by funding opposition groups as well as anti-regime broadcasting to the tune of tens of millions of dollars a year. Jesus. One State Department funding document, for instance, refers to a project to use Iran's growing water crisis to drum up public anger against regime, quote, mismanagement, unquote. To date, U.S. government records show that the Trump administration has spent over $1 million, at least, since 2016 on financing anti-regime activism within Iran. The policy is not new, though. Altogether, since 2006, successive U.S. administrations have invested tens of millions of dollars a year on, quote, democracy promotion efforts in Iran, serving as cover for long-standing, quote, regime change, unquote, aspirations. Much of the media programming funded by the State Department has focused on glorifying the reign of the Shah of Iran, the brutal U.S./UK-backed dictator who was deposed by the 1979 revolution. The propaganda appears to have worked, with many participants in the latest protests calling for the Shah's exiled son Reza Pahlavi to return to power in Iran. So let me just stop here and explain that a lot of the people that were protesting in my area here, a lot of them were pushing the idea of like, yeah, the Shah should come in. The Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, he's the guy that can change everything and make everything better, and everybody's going to be happy. But again, like I told you before, under the Shah, which was, to be fair, it was his father. It was the father of Reza Pahlavi that was obviously taking over. His son was obviously not old enough. He was not old enough to be in any position of power, and obviously he wouldn't have had that position of power at the time anyway. But his father had a terrible reign as the Shah, because a lot of people were pissed off about that. They were pissed off about the fact that he was basically a dictator in his own right. Now maybe he was, he put a nice smile on his face, and he seemed like a nice guy, maybe, whatever, but he was still doing things to the Iranian people that they did not appreciate. Unfortunately, a lot of them still have their loyalists. No matter what, you're always going to have people supporting some form of government, no matter what it is, who it is. And obviously Reza Pahlavi had that, and he was able to continue his reign until the 1979 when everything was overthrown. Now, a lot of that was because of again, back then, I'm sure the U.S. tried to push a lot of their propaganda back then too, to say, you should get rid of the Shah and put in a puppet government. But in reality, I mean, the idea of putting in a Shah now would be just another step towards getting a more puppet government in there. If the Shah wouldn't be already bad enough. So. Yeah, but a lot of the people are falling for a lot of the Iranian people in America, and I'm sure in Iran too, are falling for the bullshit of like, oh yeah, put in a Shah government, that's going to make everything wonderful, or it's all going to be puppies and rainbows. Of course it's not going to be. That's bullshit. No, anybody, anytime you have, a dictatorship in power, it's going to be terrible. It's terrible now. It's not going to be any better under another one. It's just going to be the same thing. So, and the rest of the thing here says, two congressional documents published early last year and one released just a month before the protests throw light on the Trump administration's policy of escalation in Iran. The documents are research reports published by the Congressional Research Service, written by Kenneth Katzman, a former CIA analyst specializing in Iran, Iraq, and the Gulf states. One document is titled Iran's Foreign and Defense Policies, dated February 6, 2017, describes how the administration's announcement placing Iran, quote, officially on notice, quote, unquote, could signal that, quote, the new administration might change U.S. rules of engagement to include the use of deadly force in future incidents, unquote. Let me read a little bit more here, and it says, The government's decision to quote, at least maintain, if not increase defense ties to the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, states, are also, quote, pivotal to the U.S. efforts to counter Iran. There's another quote here. It says, the Trump administration has returned to earlier characterizations of Iran as an adversary whose malign activities and ballistic missile tests must be met with U.S. responses. The document warns that escalating indirect U.S. pressure on Iran could lead to the preemptive collapse of the nuclear agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. Quote, military action to counter Iran's support for the Houthis or against Iranian ships in the Gulf could lead to a pattern of escalation that causes a collapse of the JCPOA. Just to note, the Houthi rebels are fighting in Yemen right now, which is being, just bombed the fuck out of by Saudi Arabia and backed by America. So the Houthi rebels are fighting against Saudi Arabia to protect the Yemeni people, and they don't want Saudi Arabia to fuck up at Yemen any more than they already are. But at this space, it looks like they're already going to be successful at that, unfortunately. But the Houthis are doing everything they can, and they are a Shia militia group, again, backed by Iran. So, let's see. It says the document also highlights the potential for an escalation of military activities to counter Iran led by the Gulf regimes. Quote, factors that could force a shift in Iran's foreign policy could include the expansion or institutionalization of a Saudi-led coalition of Arab Sunni states that might succeed in defeating movements and governments backed by Iran. A further congressional document authored by Katzman titled Iran, Politics, Human Rights, and U.S. Policy, dated February 17, 2017, provides further detail on the Trump administration's attempts to escalate pressure on Iran. Under the heading, quote, military options, the document notes that like Obama, President Trump has kept, quote, potential military action against Iran, quote unquote, on the table, but has moved considerably close to this option. The Trump administration has not stated a position on whether it would seek to change Iran's regime, but its characterization of Iran as a U.S. adversary could suggest that the administration might support efforts to oust the Iranian regime should opportunities to do so present themselves. So this is a very long article. I don't want to go through it, any longer here. But if you would like, I'm going to post a link at the bottom of the video here, just in the description box. Just check it out. It's a really, really good article from Mint News Press, and check out more of Mint News Press. It's a very good publication. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, it's not surprising. The U.S. has always tried to make America. The U.S. has always tried to make Iran more of its puppet, just like any other Middle Eastern country out there. And I've seen maps. I've seen this map before. It's just a made-up map that somebody made that showed how there's military bases in all the countries that are around Iran. So Iraq, Turkey, Afghanistan, all these different Middle Eastern countries. And the only country that does not have doesn't have any military bases that are American is Iran. And the country of Iran is just surrounded by all these military bases and all these countries that are puppet governments to the United States. And if once America is able to make Iran its own puppet, government, another puppet government, that would basically be the nail in the coffin for the Middle East to be able to dictate its own choices and not be run by the government of the United States and not be told what to do, and also America not getting what it wants from that government. So the likelihood of that happening right now, it seems very high with Trump in office, but I really hope it does not happen, because that would be an awful situation. And Iran needs to be as far away from being in the same to being in cahoots with America, because America is just going to make things worse for them. They are not going to improve it. All they want to do is just get Iran's oil. They want to tell Iranians, what to do, how to think, and stuff like that. You don't need that shit. The things are only getting worse, and Iran's going to turn into Afghanistan and Iraq and all that stuff. Iran is, fine the way it is as far as the way it is right now. Of course, like I said, the regime government is terrible. But as far as the way the country looks, it's in perfect shape right now. I mean, it's not a disaster like Yemen and Libya and Afghanistan, Iraq, all these different, Pakistan, Somalia, everywhere. Those countries are all in fucking ruins right now because America's bombing the shit out of them. You can add Niger onto that list now too. So that's 8 countries that we're currently bombing right now. Imagine if Iran becomes that because we want to do a regime change. It would be an awful situation, and that's the last thing Iran needs. All right. Okay, so let's go on to the next story here. And as many of you know, there was a State of the Union by President Trump. I initially did not watch the State of the Union. I ended up watching like 98% of it later on because I had things to do that night. I wanted to watch it to make sure I know all the, absurd things that Trump was saying. To break it down for you, basically Trump said a bunch of flowery rhetoric. He said how, how wonderful his policies are doing, how everything that he's doing is great, and black unemployment is at its lowest, which is, by the way, very deceiving because there's a lot of black people that are just not in the workforce anymore. So of course it's going to be low unemployment, because there isn't a lot of black people currently working. So that's, it's very easy to characterize things in ways that benefit your message. But yeah, so I mean, basically it was just a bunch of bullshit. You can go check it out. It's I found the video on YouTube. You can go check it out there, if you can stomach listening to an hour and a half of Donald Trump talking. But yeah, good luck with that. So I am going to discuss, however, the response by Joe Kennedy III, who gave the official Democratic response, and I'm also going to address Bernie Sanders' response. So Joe Kennedy. So to be fair, or to be clear, before Joe Kennedy III he gave his response, there was the kind of like excerpts of his speech came out and stuff, so people kind of already knew what he was going to do, or what he was going to say, and I posted the article on my page, and I kind of addressed it and stuff, but then, so he ended up giving basically the same kind of speech, and I'm just going to go over an article here that kind of discusses what he says, and I'm also going to be playing a clip of what he says as well. It's a short 1-minute clip. Okay, so let's read the article here. It says, Representative Joe Kennedy responds to Trump's State of the Union. Bullies never win. Representative Joe Kennedy III, Democratic Massachusetts, accused President Donald Trump of dividing the country in the official Democratic response to the State of the Union address on Tuesday night. Folks, this is quote, "Folks, it would be easy to dismiss the past year as chaos, as partisanship, as politics, but it's far bigger than that," said Kennedy, the 37-year-old grandson of Robert F. Kennedy. "This administration isn't just targeting the laws that protect us, they're targeting the very idea that we are all worthy of protection. For the Trump administration, dignity isn't something that you're born with, but something you measure by your net worth, your celebrity, your headlines, your crowd size," Kennedy added, "not to mention the gender of your spouse, the country of your birth, the color of your skin, the God of your prayers." So let me play this clip here. So before I go on to the rest of the article, I'm just going to play this clip. It's just a 1-minute clip. It says, in Democratic response, Representative Kennedy addresses Dreamers in Spanish and English. Okay.
That is our story. It began the day our founding fathers and mothers set sail for a new world, fleeing oppression and intolerance. It continued with every word of our independence, the audacity to declare that all men are created equal, an imperfect promise for a nation struggling to become a more perfect union. It grew with every suffragette step, every freedom rider's voice, and with every weary soul we welcome to our shores. And to all the dreamers out there watching tonight, let me be absolutely clear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes y no nos vamos a alejar. You are part of our story. We will fight for you, and we will not walk away.
Okay, that was extremely cringeworthy, and it's so typical of what Democrats do. If you remember, Tim Kaine did something similar. I'm not sure where it was. I think it was back in 2016, and he was speaking Spanish somewhere for some reason. And yeah, he was just giving a speech. I think it was addressing immigration, and he just started speaking Spanish randomly. And as you can see, Joe Kennedy III this year decided to do the same exact thing, and everybody just started clapping. Listen, this is a calculated effort by these Democrats to talk about how, or to basically talk about these issues, and then talk about, tell the Mexican people, the Spanish people, tell them, oh, we're on your side. We're never gonna put you, we're not gonna use you as a bargaining chip. We're not gonna put you to the side. We're always gonna be there for you. In reality, that's fucking bullshit. Because in the negotiations when the government shutdown was going on, Democrats used the Dreamers as a bargaining chip, and then they ended up throwing them aside so they can agree with Trump to fund his stupid fucking border wall. So they did not end up standing up for the Dreamers when they should have, when they could have used the issue of basically sending children to either countries they were not born in or the countries that their parents were born in. They when they should have stood up for them for that, they did it for like 5 seconds, and then they were like, oh my God, Donald Trump is gonna, he's gonna be letting the government shut down, or the Republicans are gonna let the government shut down. So we need to, give Trump what he wants, give Republicans what they want, and then they're gonna give us, they're gonna give us the, they're going to appease us and allow the Dreamers to have their, to stay in the United States and not be sent back to Mexico. Of course, that didn't end up happening because the Republicans are scam artists, and they're gonna fuck you over whenever they have, whenever they see the chance, and that's exactly what they did. And Democrats fell on the, they fell into the trap, and they just didn't. They were too big of fucking pussies to stand up for the people that deserve to be stood up for. And these are the people they claim to stand up for, and they really don't in reality. So yeah, I mean, I just thought that was a stupid little thing he said there. But okay. Reading the rest of the article here, it says he accused Trump of presenting Americans one false choice after another based on the premise that in order for one to win, another must lose. He said the administration had asked them to pick between coal miners or single moms, rural communities or inner cities, the coast or the heartland. We fight for both, Kennedy said, because the strongest, richest, greatest nation in the world should not have to leave anyone behind, even though you did. Speaking from an auto shop schoolroom in Fall River, Massachusetts, Kennedy highlighted Democratic demands for a higher minimum wage, paid leave, and extended health care while declaring that top CEOs making 300 times the average worker is not right, while the stock market soars. Let me just stop right there and say, wow, okay, that's great. I'm surprised you... What did he mention? He said minimum wage, paid leave, and expanded health care, and talking about how CEOs make a ton of money. That's great. You mentioned that. That's wonderful. What are you doing to solve that? Are you suggesting any kind of policies? Are you suggesting any kind of policy that you should put forth? You're just saying that we're demanding this. But what are the details of it? Give some policy substance that people can hang on to, so that they know that you're serious about addressing these issues and about making them part of your, hopefully, your platform, whatever platform you're running on, which I guarantee they're not going to do that. But if you were to do that, at least give some details so that people know that they can trust you, that you're going to be taking it seriously. But of course, they're not taking it seriously, which is why they don't get into the policy specifics. They just glaze over it and then just move on to the next issue. The article continues, it says, but it was the lines targeting Trump's demeanor and its alienation of Americans who feel, quote, fractured fault lines across our country, quote unquote, that were the most pointed. Quote, bullies may land a punch, Kennedy said. They might leave a mark, but they have never, not once in the history of our United States, managed to match the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future. Yeah, that's just like a typical Democratic line, where just you're trying to like zets the person and just trying to make them, you're trying to use some sort of like clever line as if it's gonna is that gonna do anything to Trump? No, he's not. Trump is just gonna shrug that off and act like, oh, who gives a shit, and then he's just gonna call him some names and then just move it along. In the rest of another part of the article, quoting Kennedy, he says, there is no mercy in a system that makes healthcare a luxury, Kennedy said at the time. There is no mercy in a country that turns their back on those most in need of protection, the elderly, the poor, the sick, and the suffering. There is no mercy in a cold shoulder to the mentally ill. I mean, that's great. You're pointing out all these things that you claim to be passionate about, but what are you going to do about them? I mean, you're not going to do anything because you're not getting into the meat of it. You're just mentioning it and then, okay, whatever. This is my speech. I don't have very much time to talk, so let me just move it along. That's pretty much it. He says, another part says, you are part of the story. You are part of our story. You are part of our story, he said. We will fight for you. We will not walk away. I think he said that in the clip that I showed. But anyway, I mean, that was just a typical fucking Democratic speech. I mean, I almost didn't even want to cover it because it was so awful. You could tell that based on the inflection in his voice, the way he pauses between every sentence that he gives, like he's trying to sound like Obama kind of. And a lot of the Democrats, unsurprisingly, were fawning over him. Oh my God, that was such a great speech. This was just like Obama in 2004 when he made his entrance at the Democratic National Committee. That was back when John Kerry was running against George Bush. And Barack Obama was basically introduced to the country, and yeah, they're comparing that to this. Are you kidding me? He didn't even say anything. This is obviously a guy that's just trying to get the Democrats to love him by saying nothing, basically. And they obviously take it as something like amazing. All the Democratic loyalists and pundits that are pro-Democrat, Joy Reid and Maddow and stuff, they all loved it, of course. I mean, who would be surprised by that? But anyway, let me move on to Bernie's State of the Union, which was much, much better. And then I'm going to be playing a clip of that. So, let's see. This was an article from Time. The last article I read regarding Joe Kennedy's speech was from NBC News. So this is from Time magazine. So let me just read the. Yeah, let me just read the a little breakdown of what the speech was about, and then I'll play the video of him talking, and then we can see what he says here. So, the title basically just says read Bernie Sanders' rebuttal to the President Trump's State of the Union address. The article says Vermont Senator and former Democratic primary presidential candidate Bernie Sanders live streamed his rebuttal to President Trump's State of the Union address Tuesday night. In an address streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, Senator Sanders delivered an alternative to the official Democratic rebuttal from Congressman Joe Kennedy and a Spanish language rebuttal from Virginia delegate Elizabeth Guzman. I have no idea who that is. Sanders opened his speech by addressing President Trump's early economic record, criticizing Republicans' so-called tax reform bill, and arguing that wealthy Americans have never had it so good, while millions of American workers are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep their head above water. Quoting Bernie here, it says, "In my view, that's wrong," Sanders said, adding the taxpayers of this country should not be providing corporate welfare to the wealthiest families in this country. Sanders also took note of issues that Trump's State of the Union did not address, including climate change, campaign finance, voter suppression, and college debt, and argued that many Americans hold quote, a very different vision for the future of our country than the one offered by Trump and congressional Republicans. But the truth is that there is a lot of good news out there as well. Sanders said, referring to the Women's March among other demonstrations that have called for social, economic, and racial justice. Quoting him one more time here, in an unprecedented way, we are witnessing a revitalization of American democracy with more and more people standing up and fighting back. So let me play his video here, and then I'll give a few more words at the end.
President Trump talked tonight about the strength of our economy. Well, on that point, he's right. Official unemployment today is 4.1%, which is the lowest it has been in years, and the stock market in recent months has soared. That's the good news. But what President Trump failed to mention is that his first year in office marked the lowest level of job creation since 2010. And since March of last year, the 3 richest people in America saw their wealth increase by more than $68 billion. 3 people, a $68 billion increase in wealth. Meanwhile, the average worker saw an increase of 4 cents an hour. Last year, he supported legislation that would have thrown up to 32 million people off of the health care they had, while at the same time substantially raising premiums for older Americans. The reality is that although we were able to beat back Trump's effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act, 3 million fewer Americans have health insurance today than before Trump took office. As you'll all recall, during his campaign, Trump promised not to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. That is what he promised. As president, however, he supported a Republican budget resolution that proposed slashing Medicaid by $1 trillion and cutting Medicare by $500 billion. Further, President Trump's own budget called for cutting Social Security disability insurance by $64 billion. Trump spoke about how other countries' drugs cost far less, yet he has done nothing to allow Americans to purchase less expensive prescription drugs from abroad or to require Medicare to negotiate drug prices, which he promised he would do when he ran for president. As president, the tax reform legislation Trump signed into law a few weeks ago provides 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, drives up the deficit by $1.7 trillion, and raises taxes on 92 million middle-class families by the end of the decade. As president, not only has Trump not taken on Wall Street, he has appointed more Wall Street billionaires to his administration than any president in history. And now, on behalf of Wall Street, he is trying to repeal the modest provisions of the Dodd-Frank legislation, which provide consumer protections against Wall Street thievery. Trump talked about DACA and immigration, but what he did not tell the American people is that he precipitated this crisis in September by repealing President Obama's executive order protecting the Dreamers. We need to seriously address the issue of immigration, but that does not mean dividing families and reducing legal immigration by 25 to 50%. It surely does not mean forcing the taxpayers of our country to spend $25 billion on a wall that candidate Trump promised us that Mexico would pay for. And it definitely doesn't mean a racist immigration policy that excludes people of color from around the world. Instead of spending $1.5 trillion over 10 years rebuilding our crumbling roads and bridges, what Trump wants to do is to encourage states to sell their infrastructure to Wall Street, to wealthy campaign contributors, and even to foreign governments.
So as you can see there, Bernie, as usual, addresses Trump, addresses, these important issues by going with substance, by going with policy substance that people care about, that progressives care about, and giving you details about what Trump should have done, what he said he was going to do, and what he has not done, which is a lot, basically. He has all these talks about how he was going to save Medicare and Medicaid and make sure people aren't getting screwed over, and we're not going to be going to all these disastrous wars, and I'm not going to be sending your jobs overseas and stuff. No, he's doing all that shit. I mean, that's just what he does. That's what he does, and he's a fucking greedy, corrupt businessman who went bankrupt 6 times. So why would I trust anything that he's going to do? He's obviously going to make a bunch of shit up. He's going to sell you something. That's what he is. He's a used car salesman. He's a used car salesman who's playing president. Just like little kids that are playing house, basically. This is what he's doing. And his State of the Union was just a bunch of bullshit. It was just a bunch of political mumbo jumbo and just, talking about how, I love America and we need to all be coming together and be, becoming closer and uniting, and fucking bullshit, man. God damn it. At least if you're gonna fucking be the Donald Trump that we know you're gonna be, at least talk shit like you usually do, instead of pretending like you give a damn about bipartisanship and being agreeing with everybody and playing kumbaya and getting along. No, you don't give a shit about that stuff. Just stop bullshitting around. So luckily, Bernie, compared to Joe Kennedy's awful speech, at least he managed to give some sort of a decent rebuttal. He did mention Russia, interfering in the election and stuff, but he went over it very, very, quickly. It lasted like 20 seconds. So it wasn't, he didn't place too much emphasis on it, which, I'm happy with at least. So definitely Bernie Sanders, he gave a good response. I'm glad he at least got to do that, and we'll see what happens as far as 2020 and stuff goes. So yeah. All right, let's go on to our next article here, and this is a great piece from The Intercept, which is one of my favorite publications, one of my favorite progressive publications out there. And this is covering a Democratic candidate for governor of Michigan who's Muslim. And he is basically he's basically getting shafted by the Democrats. And this is not surprising coming from a lot of the Democrats who want certain candidates to run. So the Democrats are usually up to their usual tricks, basically. So this is an article from Zaid Jalani. It's from February 1st of this year. And the title is Democrats Anonymously Target Muslim Candidate Questioning His Eligibility to Run for Michigan Governor. On the same day that he unveiled an urban agenda that highlights public transportation, affordable housing, and criminal justice reform, Michigan gubernatorial candidate Abdul El Sayed came under fire in what he has described as a, quote, birther-like campaign questioning his eligibility to run for governor. El Sayed, a lifelong Michigander whose campaign has raised nearly $2 million, could be the first Muslim American governor in the United States. He is considered the most serious challenger to Democratic frontrunner Gretchen Whitmer ahead of the August primary. And on Monday, Bridge, a Michigan magazine, published an article saying the stint El Sayed spent as a medical student and professor at Columbia University in New York between 2013 and 2016 could be used against him, writing that, quote, questions surrounding El Sayed's candidacy are an open secret among Democrats, particularly in Southeast Michigan. Most of the Democrats and election lawyers the magazine interviewed spoke on condition of anonymity because they didn't want to be caught up in a controversy. How convenient. A controversy has resulted nonetheless, with much of the Detroit press picking up the story. El Sayed, in a fundraising email, said the article is the work of, quote, establishment Democrats resorting to the kind of birther tactics that opponents to Barack Obama used to discredit his run for the presidency. Asked about the dispute, Whitmer's campaign neither condemned nor supported the allegations against El Sayed and had nothing to say about his response. Quote, Whitmer is not focused on chatter about who is or who is not getting into the race, and frankly there has been way too much distraction from how we fix our roads, grow our economy, and protect healthcare for Michigan families. Annie Ellison, a spokesperson for the campaign, told The Intercept, anything that distracts from how we solve problems and put people first in the state is not something she's paying attention to. You would think she would be paying attention to discrimination, but okay. Continuing here, it says the Michigan Constitution provides that a candidate for governor must have been a, quote, registered elector in this state for 4 years prior to the election. El Sayed grew up in Metro Detroit. He played high school sports and started medical school at the University of Michigan. He completed his medical education in New York, but returned to Detroit in 2015 after being tapped to lead the Detroit Health Department. Quoting his campaign, it says, while we knew the attacks were coming, we didn't think they would come in the form of insider Democrats using Trump's birther tactics. The lawyers and Democratic officials interviewed by Bridge say that his time in New York and the fact that he has a driver's license in that state means he does not meet the basic qualifications for office. One Democratic elected official told the magazine, quote, there will be a court case guaranteed. The only question is who is going to step up to take him out. End of quote. Another framed his questions about El Sayed's eligibility in the context of concern for the Democratic Party. This is the part, by the way, that pisses me off the most. It says, quote, one party leader said he fears a nightmare scenario in which El Sayed comes from behind and wins the Democratic Party primary in August, then is knocked off the November general election ballot through a lawsuit brought by Republicans. The article says. See, let's just stop it there. That is a perfect example of Democrats cowering to these pathetic Republicans, these pathetic, smear merchants in the Republican Party, instead of responding by defending one of their fellow Democrats. I'm assuming they think he's a Democrat. I don't know. Based on the tactics that they're using against, they don't even think he's a fucking from Detroit or maybe even an American. But anyway, when responding to these smear merchants, the Republican Party, they don't respond by saying, hey, listen, this is fucked up. You are treating one of our candidates as if he's not even a citizen of this country, which he is, just because his name is different, that you think he's not an American, of course, which is typical Republican tactics. So how do Democrats respond? They respond by saying, oh, no, we shouldn't allow the, we're not sure if this guy should be running in the primary, because what if he wins, and then the Republicans end up coming with a lawsuit. They come with a lawsuit, and then that fucks up our chances. So instead of pushing for a democratic system, they're the Democratic Party, right? Instead of pushing for a democratic system where you accept all comers, you see their I don't know, I guess in this case, their record, the record for who they are as a person, this person's name, where they were born, all this stuff. Instead of using that as proof, they were worried about some lawsuit, some bullshit lawsuit that the Republicans might use to frame him as not American or not from Michigan or not whatever, qualified to run in the primary or the general, essentially. So that's bullshit, man. Like, stand up for your fucking candidate. In the case of choosing one or the other, fine. You don't have to choose one or the other. You don't have to back one or the other, supporting one over the other one. But at least back him up when he's allowed to run in that race, or should be allowed to run in that race, because he is. And at least defend him on that, and then, do whatever you want after one of the candidates loses. If you want to back them after after one of the, when the primary is over and one of the candidates has won, then you can back them. But nobody's saying you should back them here, but at least defend their right to run. You can't even do that much. So continuing here, it says, when he lived in New York, El Sayed obtained a local driver's license in 2013, which meant he had to discard his Michigan license. But the Detroit Free Press queried the Secretary of State and was told that while it's accurate that El Sayed didn't vote in the state of Michigan between 2013 and 16, he didn't lose his voter registration. Fred Woodhams, a communications officer in the Secretary of State's office, offered similar comments to us and added that the office cannot make a final ruling until El Sayed officially files paperwork on April 24th. Quoting Woodhams, through an email, it says, I can confirm that, according to the state's voter records, El Sayed has been continuously registered to vote since 2003. El Sayed has not filed to run for governor, so we can have no further comment. Candidates have until April 24th to file. This is ridiculous, man. The way Democrats treat some Democrats these days is just unbelievable. This is tantamount to what Republicans do, but they do it more in public. Obviously, they smear in the public. In this case, Democrats are basically smearing this guy, behind closed doors, and basically trying to discredit him by saying, "Oh, what if he's not eligible to run, and what if he's not eligible to do this?" And who would ever say this about a white man named John Smith? Nobody's gonna say that. But because his name is Abdul El Sayed, they treat him as like as an alien, as if he's not even from this state, even though he was born there. He went to school there, he went to college there, but then, I don't know, a few years he was in New York, so, oh my God, he doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't have a driver's license, didn't have a driver's license for a few years or whatever, or he threw it out or whatever. Like, they're clinging at every possible opportunity. I just want to read this last part here. It says, El Sayed's 3 years in New York did cause his voter registration to be placed on, quote, cancellation countdown status. But because he voted in November 2016 in Michigan, his status was returned to normal. He also owned a residence in Ann Arbor, while living in New York. And then it goes on to quote a couple people here. It's just a couple lawyers that are saying, one of them is defending him, and another one is the chair of the Federal Election Commission. So you can read the article to figure that part out. It's a little bit long, but I just wanted to jump to the last part here. It says, polls have shown Whitmer with a double-digit lead over the other Democrats in the race, and she has raised about $1 million more than El Sayed has. A December poll showed Republicans Bill Schwett with a 3-point lead over Whitmer for the general election. Still, El Sayed's campaign has garnered a wave of national media attention, and his progressive politics have earned him the support of veterans of the 2016 Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. He is the 30-year-old son of an Egyptian immigrant, and he has drawn comparisons to Obama owing in part to his youth and charismatic presence on the stump. El Sayed is in fact highly critical of the former president. That's good. And the last line says the partisan primaries will take place on August 7th. So yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, though, this is just classic smear tactics by, obviously, I mean, any kind of political party either way, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. But in this case, like, you would never expect the Democrats that have this Democrat running. He's not even running yet. I mean, he hasn't even filed his paperwork yet, apparently, according to this article, and they're already trying to smear him and discredit him and act like he doesn't exist and like he shouldn't run and he doesn't deserve to be, considered because of, I don't know, random stipulations that the in this case, I guess it's the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, decided to address, but they haven't. I don't think they've even commented on it. This article doesn't say anything about the FEC saying anything. It's just a bunch of Democratic insiders and establishment types worried about what might happen, which we don't even know what's going to happen. So it's like, you're just paranoid over nothing. And like I said before, you're just cowering to these fucking assholes in the Republican Party who, you're afraid of smearing this guy because he's Muslim and, because he's, again, doesn't have a regular American sounding name. So, he wasn't supposedly, in Michigan for 3 years, even though he was born there. And you want to just make up a bunch of shit about him and you want to smear him and treat him like the other. And this is very much like what happened in 08 with Obama. It's very similar, And, obviously he's much more progressive than Obama, and he's critical of Obama too, which is great. So he's obviously a progressive guy. That's another reason why they're smearing him behind closed doors, because not only is he progressive, but he's also, got these supposed issues that they want to bring up and they claim to be worried about. So it's just typical of the establishment, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, whatever. These are people that are just looking to smear whoever is not like them, whoever is not, in the, following along with the party line, essentially. So it's definitely more than about who he is and where he was born or where he lived or whatever. It's more about his progressive policies, for sure. Okay, so let's get to the final article here, or the final topic that I wanted to cover. So this is an article from McClatchydc.com, which is basically just a mainstream publication. And there was an article written by a writer named Andrew Malcolm. And the title says, "No Ideas, Policies, or Talking Points. Doddering Pelosi. Crew leans on the quote, 'We are not Trump.'" That's the headline. So basically saying that the Democrats are pushing the idea of we are not Donald Trump, so we are obviously the better choice for you to support and for you to vote for. So obviously not a surprising take from these kind of Democrats, because that's basically what they've been saying for a while. So let's check it out here. It says, "Distracted by Donald Trump's disputations, style, and flagrant violations of political norms, Democrats have consistently underestimated his political appeal. No way he could beat their candidate in 2016, but he did. No way the New Yorker would actually make a conservative Supreme Court nomination, let alone get it through, but he did. Signed tax reform and repealed Obamacare's core mandate, too. Plus dozens of executive orders, contradicting his predecessor's efforts. Now, Democrats and their sympathetic media are eagerly awaiting the oncoming annihilation of many of Trump's congressional ground troops in the midterm elections just 40 weeks away. Maybe so. Republicans losing one or both chambers would stymie Trump's agenda for at least 2 years, not to mention his district and higher court judicial appointments. But Democrats appear to be making a familiar mistake again, one that's become chronic for them this century. That is, in the words of another Republican president they misjudged, misunderestimating their GOP opponent. So just to pause here for a second, that's a great breakdown of what Democrats have been, what's unfortunate situations the Democrats have gotten themselves into, where they have just focused on the possibility of putting forth these shitty shitty ideas, and hoping these shitty candidates, in this case Trump, is not going to gain any. He's not going to gain any popularity. He's not going to be taken seriously by anybody. Everybody's going to hate him. Now, to be fair, Trump does have a 30% approval rating, so he's not popular. So we know that. But as far as him being, hated by the entire country, and everybody just going against him, and then he's going to be impeached, which, to be fair, can't happen. But obviously it hasn't happened yet. But for all these different things to happen, they're relying on this kind of stuff, and they say, oh, look what a terrible person he is. Look what an asshole he is. Look how mean he is. Look at all these bad words that he uses, and look how he smears everybody. Like, they rely on that, basically, to get them through, I guess a political situation. I guess if they want to go through the primary, I guarantee you all the Democrats running in the primary for 2020, they're all going to be saying how they're not Trump. I think everybody except against Bernie Sanders, if he runs, everybody except him, everybody's going to be saying, oh my God, look how terrible Trump is, and I'm good because I'm not Trump. Bernie Sanders would never say that. He would actually focus on policy substance. And yeah, so I mean, like, that's just the same shit they've been doing for I don't know how long now. And it's like what is it? Are you too lazy to focus on substance? Are you too lazy to address real issues out there? Or are you just so compromised by your donors that they don't want you to focus on the issues that people care about? So you just don't even bother with it. You give, little platitudes and cliches that, just get you by, kind of like Joe Kennedy did in his State of the Union. And, you just get, give a little short, short statements on those issues, but you don't really address them in detail. So this is a good, this article makes a good point of that. So I'm going to continue here. It says, presidential midterms are usually political report cards on the party controlling the White House. Bill Clinton got shellacked in 1994. Riding support after 9/11, George W. Bush gained House and Senate seats in 2002, but then lost both houses in 2006. All signs so far indicate Democratic candidates and the money-strapped National Party are counting on winning back at least part of Congress, specifically the House, this year by playing off the country's widely held displeasure or disgust with Trump. They are confident that "we are not Trump" is sufficient to carry the day November 6th, which is November 6th, 2018. Anti-Trump animus might seem a tempting bet. A majority of Americans have disapproved of Trump's job performance seemingly since within minutes of his taking the oath 53 weeks ago. Although 8 of 10 Republicans have stuck with him, Trump's overall job approval has bobbed along from the low 40s to mid-30s, historically low for a new chief executive. Trump was elected by a dedicated plurality, promising to shake up Washington's comfortable, self-centered ways on both sides of the aisle. He's certainly shaken things up from a style perspective, even going after his own party's establishment leaders. Trump has in fact invented the political equivalent of fracking, finding and creating vast reservoirs of subterranean turmoil to exploit for sometimes murky reasons. Now, no one ever seeks or becomes president with a minute ego. Trump's is, let's say, plus size. All the turmoil keeps the daily, even hourly focus on him, which seems important to the man. So that's a great point being made by the author. He's saying that the attention that Trump gets puts so much attention of the Democrats on how Trump is this, crazy, shoot from the hip, asshole type personality who's just, basically a dick. And instead of focusing on the issues that he's really shitty about and really shitty, all the shitty, issues that he's pushing, instead of pointing out those kind of things, they just focus on, I don't know, he's really mean, and he, he talks about shithole countries, and he talks about how, the white supremacists are fine people and stuff like that, which is fucked up. These are all fucked up things he's saying. Nobody's disputing that he is a prick, that he is an asshole. But when it comes to addressing his specific policies, Democrats barely even bother going, even dealing with that, because they know how hard that is. They know they have to get into the details of that. And if they do that, they're going to get, they feel, of course it's not true, but they figure people are dumb, so they're going to bore them with details of substance, on policy. Of course that's bullshit, because when you look at somebody like Bernie, he's all over. He's talking about substance all the time, and people listen to him. But Democrats think, no, they got to dumb everything down to make sure they keep their audience listening, essentially, even though a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with Democrats these days. So the article continues here. It says, but it also often distracts from or completely destroys the daily focus on his own priorities, programs, and strategies. Such behavior delights his you-tell-him base, but it leaves most everyone else confused, ignorant, or even worried about what he's doing and why. The president has lacked the day-to-day discipline for driving home the administration's accomplishments and goals beyond his Twitter account. Some days, yes, others not so much, often because he can't resist some provocative tweet that causes opponents and critics to hyperventilate into hyperbole. Nancy Pelosi, for instance, dismissed as crumbs the tax reform-fueled corporate contagion of 1,000 employees' bonuses. She's a multimillionaire, of course, so $1,000 is walking around money. Seeming out of touch is a real problem for the Septuaginarian. I'm sorry, this is not a word I've ever seen before. Septuaginarian San Franciscan and her aged party leadership that is perhaps trying to overcome its liberal coastal tunnel vision and convince middle America of its genuine concern, even for people living here legally. It says, quick, what big midterm policy goals are Democrats driving as alternatives to Trump and the GOP? The positive talking points they recite in unison day after day on every channel that will have them? Yeah, that's basically a great, another great point, pointing out how they not only obsess over the things Trump says in his, the crazy things that he says on his Twitter account and on social media and stuff, which obviously gets the ire of Democrats, gets the ire of partisans that hate him and stuff, even many Republicans out there. More quote-unquote moderate Republicans, who, prefer a president that's nicer, I guess. But, yeah, that grows the ire of a lot of those kind of people, and Democrats use that to say, look how terrible Trump is. Look at all this, fucked up shit he's saying. Look at, again, like I said before, all this fucked up shit he's saying, all this, crazy rhetoric that he uses that offends a lot of people. So basically, you're getting the PC police all riled up because of bad words that Mr. Trump is using. God forbid he says something that offends us, and let's use that as a reason to attack him instead of focusing on policy substance. Again, it all boils down to that. Okay, so we got a few more short paragraphs here. It says, that is the talking points other than we're not Trump. He's terrible. Anyone? Bueller? For however long Trump lasts, and even with the unresolved threat of the special prosecutor, by the force of his personality and proclivities, he has initiated a new kind of unpredictable U.S. politics. By historical precedent, he didn't have a chance in 2016 against 16 Republicans, then the artless what's-her-name who dubbed Trump supporters deplorables, Hillary Clinton. By historical precedent, Trump's party should be en route to losing at least 24 seats and House control. Remember that chambers committees initiate all financial legislation and would have a free hand to subpoena and investigate any deplorables they choose. But the president is not on the ballot. Stocks are soaring, jobs are mounting nicely, the economy is growing at twice the rate under Obama. Do voters really see lifelong Democratic donor Trump as insufficiently Republican to punish through their midterm ballots for congressmen? Note, polls show Americans overwhelmingly detesting Congress, but consistently favoring their own member, which is where their vote actually goes. Can Pelosi and her doddering crew convince enough Americans that she and her party should retrieve the speaker's gavel without outlining specifically what, if anything positive, they propose to do differently, other than, of course, not being Donald Trump? Yeah, so, I mean, that's, other than the point about, stocks are soaring, jobs are mounting nicely. A lot of that is true. But, a lot of the jobs that are being produced are low-paying jobs, just like it was under Obama. So it's not that big of a deal. Even what was happening under Obama wasn't that great, And as far as the economy growing at twice the rate, that's not going to last forever, especially with the policies of tax cuts and deregulation and stuff. That's not really gonna, that if anything, that just leads to a short boom bust type cycle for the economy, and a lot of that is just Republican bullshit. Basically, they don't even really care about the economy growing. They just want to give tax cuts to their CEO buddies and their whoever's in corporate, all those corporate friends of theirs who are basically giving them being their donors essentially and giving them campaign money. So. Yeah, I would say majority of this article is absolutely correct, and it's pointing out that Democrats do not have a specific message to face against Trump. To be fair, to be specific, to face against Trump-like candidates 2018, so just basically all Republicans, and then 2020 when they try and take over the presidency. But yeah, they don't have a message. The message is basically, I'm not Trump. I'm, not an asshole. I'm not a mean person. I don't say shithole countries. I don't say, all the mean things about immigrants and Muslims and stuff, I'm not anti-gay. I'm not anti-abortion. It's just a lot of issues that just you don't get into specifics with. And when you don't get into the specifics of it, then you don't have to marry yourself to any ideas. Because whenever you marry yourself to ideas, then you're expected to make those ideas come to fruition. So if you're going to go out there, so let's say if Democrats go out there and say, oh yeah, we're going to be pushing for Medicare for all, we're going to be pushing for universal, college, tuition-free college, a living wage, even a $15 minimum wage, stuff like that. Getting rid of war, getting out of the different 7-8 countries that we're bombing right now. When you make promises like that, of course you have to, the people that you made those promises to, they're going to expect you they're going to hold you to it, and they're going to expect that to happen. Oops. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is just like, a lot of that just stuff comes from like just political opportunism. So they say it, the fact that they say it is nice at first glance, but then when they don't end up doing it, which, many times they don't. And, back in the day when you were, when I was following politics and I heard, different Democrats saying this stuff, I believed them. I was like, oh, okay, they must be on my side. They must be, if they're saying this, they must be honest, and they must be better. They must be moral characters, in what they're doing, compared to these Republicans who are pushing the ideas that I don't like. Now, in that case, that's fine. That's a matter that makes sense because, I obviously support this person over that person. But these days I've become so annoyed with all this, bullshit political speak and just kind of, like I said, opportunism. And, Hillary Clinton and her campaign and basically Democrats, they wanted to run against Trump to begin with. They were either wanting to run against Trump, Ted Cruz, or Ben Carson. So they were pushing all of these kind of like right-wing, kind of radical type candidates that they thought Hillary Clinton would beat. Now, to be fair, I think she would have beaten Ted Cruz and Ben Carson. But against somebody like Trump, the campaign, I'm sorry, the election was basically always close throughout the entire campaign, throughout the entire 2016 general election and stuff. Even before the general election, when they were doing polls, they showed that Hillary Clinton, was polling within, maybe 2 or 3 points ahead of Trump. Now, I think it was a little bit more to begin with, but it got less and less the more people figured out who Bernie was, and Bernie was ahead by 15 points in some polls, 10 to 15 points in some polls against Trump. But then obviously the Democrats ended up choosing Hillary. So how did that work out? You ended up choosing a person that lost to the most unpopular candidate in history. Trump had somewhere between 55 and 60% disapproval rating on the day of the election, November, whatever it was. And on that day, on election day, he had the lowest disapproval rating. I'm sorry, the highest disapproval rating, and basically nobody liked him, but they were like, you know what? This guy's kind of, he's a mystery compared to Hillary Clinton, who everybody knows. She's involved in all kinds of different scandals. To be fair, not that Trump isn't, but Hillary was just known much more on the political front, whereas Trump was a rookie. And, if you compare it to Obama was a rookie too. They didn't want Hillary. They wanted this, this cool, suave-looking black guy, this guy that was saying all these progressive things. Of course, Obama didn't actually end up doing any of those progressive things. It was all talk and no action, basically, or part action, halfway action. So I mean, in the case of Trump, Democrats didn't notice that Trump was basically this Molotov cocktail that was going to blow up the establishment, and he was going to grow the ire of all these, these typical establishment type Republicans and Democrats who, can't stand this guy that, is so, bold and shoots from the hip and says things that you wouldn't expect. And he ended up winning the election, which definitely nobody expected. So yeah, when Trump won, I mean, people just didn't know what to do anymore. And they were in a state of awe, and they basically wanted to respond by just saying, I'm not Trump. I'm not, he's a racist, he's a sexist, he's this, he's that. Their rhetoric just turned to just these simplistic talking points where they can't get into substance because Trump doesn't lack any substance himself. So they think by they can get to they can reach his voters, or I guess some voters out there. They assume that they're dumb enough to buy in. If they're dumb enough to buy into the rhetoric that Trump pushes, they're going to be dumb enough to fall into rhetoric, weak ass rhetoric that the Democrats push, which obviously is not working for progressives. It might be working for other, Dem loyalists and stuff out there, but progressives don't fall for that shit. So it all just boils down to just pushing progressive rhetoric that people can trust, and where they don't feel like they're being bamboozled, and where they're not being tricked by cheap ass talking points. So that's what it all comes down to. And if Democrats can figure this out and decide to be more than just I'm not Trump, then they can get somewhere. But unfortunately, their donors don't allow that. Their strategists and their insiders and stuff tell them the way they're going is perfectly fine, don't change, while progressives are just, screaming at them to just please do something different. And they just don't really give a shit. They're just like, fuck you, we know what we're doing. And watch, if they end up losing to Trump again, they're going to be blaming progressives. They're going to be saying progressives were the reason because they didn't come out and vote for our shitty-ass candidates who had shitty policies. All right, guys, so that is the end of our podcast today. Thank you so much for watching. It was really fun covering all of these topics. And make sure to follow me once again on Facebook.com/ProgBlacksmith, Twitter.com/ProgBlacksmith, and also check out my Patreon page and become a patron. Go to patreon.com/ProgBlacksmith. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time. Take care.